Historical Foundations of Psychology. Dear students, this is K. Srinivasachari, lecturer in psychology. Today we are going to know about parents of psychology. They are philosophy and physiology. Learning objectives. After finishing this module, you will learn the origin of psychology, historical background of psychology, and the main contributions in psychology. People have always been curious about themselves. This curiosity was entirely speculative. However, until the 19th century, when psychologists adopted a scientific approach to their subject matter. From that point forward, the field took on a new look, which was essentially empirical, with an emphasis on observation as a way of establishing facts. Its underpinning were biological and its method was empirical and experimental. We will review some of the landmark achievements of scientific psychology because it is necessary to be acquainted with the history of psychology to appreciate what psychology is today. Psychology gradually emerged over the course of the 19th century. It may be recalled that modern science is often to have its origins in the 16th century Renaissance. The seeds of scientific thought, however, are traceable to Hellenistic, Chinese, Indian, and Arabic civilizations. By the late 19th century, many philosophers had turned their attention to questions about the human mind. How do we perceive the world around us? Do people have free will, or are directions determined by events outside and inside their bodies? What is the link between mind and body? The physical world in which our bodies exist, and our thoughts, feelings, and consciousness. Philosophers had long attempted to answer these questions through careful reasoning, that is, rationalism. For instance, René Descartes, French philosopher, suggested that mind and body are distinct entities and that they interact through the pineal gland found deep within the brain. This view is known as dualism. Our philosophers, in contrast, suggested that mind can influence body and body can influence mind, a view known as interactionism. Perhaps even more important, by the end of the 19th century, many philosophers had reached the conclusion that questions about the human mind could not be answered solely by means of reasoning but required careful observations and empirical approach. This in turn raised a thorny action. How could such observation be made? This is where physiology entered the picture. Physiologists had been using the scientific method to answer questions about the nervous system and our senses for decades. During the period from 1860 to 1880, Muller described how electrical signals were conducted by nerves within the body. Hermann Helmholtz showed how receptors in eyes and ears receive and interpret sensations from the outside world. Gustav Fechner demonstrated that our perceptions of physical stimuli, for instance, the loudness of sound or brightness of a light, are related in lawful, predictable ways to the physical energies of these stimuli. When these findings were combined with the growing conviction among philosophers that the human mind could be studied through empirical means, a new idea emerged, the possibility of the scientific field of psychology. And once this idea took shape, new field of psychology itself quickly developed in the 19th century Europe. By 1879, in fact, Wilhelm Wundt had founded the first formal laboratory for research in psychology at the University of Leipzig. Because of this and other contributions, Wundt is often described as the founder of experimental psychology. Interestingly enough, he did contribute to the field of folk or cultural psychology also, but under the prevailing ethos that work remained neglected for a long time. Actually, though, Alexander Bain, a philosopher, founded the influential journal Mind in 1876, wrote several books about psychology, and trained a large number of graduate students who went on to do significant work in psychology. So, in a sense, he too is a candidate for this title, although perhaps less directly than Wundt. One of the students, G. Stanley Hall, was influential in bringing psychology to the United States. He founded the first laboratory of psychology at Johns Hopkins in 1883, helped start the American Psychological Association (APA) in 1892, and then become its first president. Psychology was a big hit in United States, perhaps because universities were relatively young and so were more receptive to change than older universities elsewhere. By 1893, 24 United States universities had published psychology laboratories. All was not smooth sailing for the new field, however.